Now, first of all, we're going to talk about the actions of Germany and how ultimately they become our enemies. And as we talked about one of our previous units when we talked about World War I, Germany had been severely punished following World War I. There was a treaty that they were forced to sign. It was called the Treaty of Versailles. And this treaty required them to take complete responsibility for starting World War I. In addition to that, it required them to pay back France and England all the debt that those countries had amassed while fighting the war. Now, the very first requirement deeply embarrassed the Germans and created this deep, deep resentment. The second requirement really was an unrealistic demand, and ultimately it ended up bankrupting the country of Germany. It ended up causing something called hyperinflation, and hyperinflation is something we have only seen a very, very few times in human history. So that's good background to understand. This is how Hitler comes into power. The problems with the Treaty of Versailles really set the stage for somebody like Hitler to come into power. Now, why Germany started fighting in particular, a World War I veteran, Austrian veteran of the war, Adolf Hitler, he was extremely bitter about losing the war, and he was deeply, deeply resentful toward the rest of Europe for the way that Germany was treated following the war. Now, after gaining power in Germany, Hitler began talking about how the German nation needed additional land for the German people. Because of the new boundaries that were created following the Treaty of Versailles and following World War I, there were some German-speaking people who were no longer in Germany's national boundaries. Now, Hitler set out a goal to take over all this land and ultimately expand the boundaries of Germany and bring these people into Germany. He also began talking to the German people and telling them that the Aryan race were a genetically superior race of people, and ultimately he believed they were destined to rule the world, and he was going to lead the Aryan nations into ruling the world. Now, in particular, Hitler had a very particular hatred for the Jewish people, and he would soon concentrate his efforts to not only get rid of the Jews in the countries, not just kick them out, but he ultimately concentrated his efforts in trying to absolutely annihilate and kill every Jewish person that he could identify. Like I said here, he particularly hated the Jewish people. Now, this is what Europe looked like after Germany attacks her neighbors. Here you can see a map of Europe and the surrounding area. This is after the advances of Nazi Germany. You can see that nearly every single country in Europe was invaded and taken over by the Nazis. The only large exceptions are Switzerland, that's the country there in the middle, and of course Spain. You can see that off to the bottom left. Switzerland had been able to remain neutral during both World War I and World War II. Because of this, they're largely left alone by almost every country. Spain, on the other hand, they were just recovering from a very, very bloody civil war. It was a fight amongst their own people, and they really were in no position to get involved in a conflict with other countries. So there we go. We've just set the stage for what was going on with Nazi Germany. Next, we want to start talking about Japan.